Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Spencer Sheinin of Shift Financial Insights. Spencer, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Gresh. Nice to see you again.
Definitely super excited to see you and have you on the show. And before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Spencer so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Spencer has the rare and unique combination of speaking both the language of accounting and the language of entrepreneurship. As an accountant, he's a 20-year CPA, CA, and as an entrepreneur, he's owned businesses in manufacturing, construction, cold storage, real estate, and now financial services. Spencer is the best-selling author of Entreprenumbers, The Surprising Simple Path to Financial Clarity, and he's also a highly rated international speaker, delivering engaging and actionable keynote presentations and workshops to the industry and membership organizations such as EO and Tech Vistage. With the goal of making accounting not suck, Spencer is now CEO and founder of Shift Financial Insights, providing ridiculously simple accounting and financial insights for businesses on the rise. Spencer, great to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Let's do it. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it as well. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Yeah, I mean, my CEO story goes a ways back. As you mentioned, I am a CPA. I was doing, it used to be called the CA program in Canada. I did that. And I admit I was like physically nauseous every day. I actually hated accounting, and people who know me from those days are like, what, you have an accounting practice now? Like they'll literally fall off their chair. And then I went into investment banking and I felt equally ill. And it was actually like quite a fluke. I ended up doing kind of a little small real estate project here in Vancouver. And I got to be really good friends with the builder. And we just started talking, and we had a very similar approach in life and in business. And I had a lot of the book smart, the accounting, the investment banking. He had a lot of business experience, but not a lot of kind of, we'll call it the schooling side. And we just thought that was a really beautiful potential partnership. And we just decided kind of, I don't want to say on a whim, we talked about it a fair amount, but we talked, let's get into business together. And we actually went out and we found our first business, which was a manufacturing business. And, for me, the acquisition, like that's what I've been doing. I've been trained how to do those things. And, we finished the deal and I was like, well, now what? Like, when you're an investor, I was transactional, I was an investment banker, I was an accountant. Once the deal's done, you move on. And I remember walking in that first day and being like, well, what do I do? Like, I didn't know what my job was. So I kind of got into being a CEO in a bit of a funny roundabout way. I mean, I intended to get into business, but I didn't. I even though I'm a CPA, and an investment banker, I didn't really know what it meant when I got into it at the time.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Now, I appreciate you sharing. It's so funny. And I almost feel like nowadays it seems like everything evolves anyway. So even sometimes when we have a set definition, it definitely evolves, just over time in different industries and different types of
And
positions,
I
I guess we
had
have.
no idea what I was up against. Like, I thought it was going to be easy, right? I was like, oh, I'll work hard. I'm a relatively smart guy. But no, it was 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I guess I wanted to drill down a little bit more, hear a little bit more on how, that came into being, the business came into being in your expertise and how you're able to kind of meld both of those, accounting and entrepreneurship, together.
Yeah. So, I was an entrepreneur for about 15 years. I had a few different businesses, as you mentioned in the intro. And then realizing I wasn't in love with them. A lot of crazy things happened in my life where I just sort of ended up in a situation, kind of like me and my partner, but yeah, first business, a few businesses later, I'm like, how did I get here? Sounds really bizarre. But I also realized I wasn't intentional with what I was doing. And so I realized I wasn't happy in those businesses. And some of that was post 2008 trauma. Some of that was just recognizing that it wasn't my passion. I exited and I took a year to figure out what I was doing. And during that time, I've been very involved with the Entrepreneurs organization. I was at a talk and it was a finance speaker who's a brilliant guy, but frankly, over everybody's head. And everybody kind of laughed because at one point I corrected one of his formulas and everyone's like, I'm not even following it, but you're correcting them. And one of the guys at the table looked at me after and said, can you put this in my business for me? I know it's important, but I don't get it. And that was kind of my light bulb moment for Shift Financial, where it's like, yeah, the problem here is the so what problem. Like, we all know it's important. We all know accounting is important. We all I don't want to say all, but most of us hate it. I don't like the day-to-day of accounting, but what's so critical is the stories that are built, that are buried in those numbers, that even if you have a perfect set of books, you still can't extract the story, the so what, the meaning. And so that's kind of what was the inspiration for what I'm doing now, and really bridging the gap. Entrepreneurship's a language, like it's its own language. Accounting is its own language. I went to school for 3 years how to learn to speak that language and write and create. And so, I see what I'm doing now. I feel like super fortunate because I'm bridging this gap. I love working with entrepreneurs and CEOs, bridge this gap between the accounting and the struggle with accounting, and making it the so what, the usable, and the story. So that's what we do now. Yeah.
Nice. No, I appreciate you sharing. It's so funny that you said language a couple of times, and language is in reference to, the financial, the accounting part, but also the entrepreneurship part. Cause I was actually thinking of the word translate as you were saying that. I was
Yeah.
like, sounds like you translate those things, because as you said, I've always heard that as well too, that the numbers do tell a story, but it's
Yeah.
only if you're able to translate it, does that story actually come out. So I love that you're able to bridge that gap.
I kind of define it like, a few, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was actually quite sick, physically sick, and at the time, I was dating an emerged doc, and she said, if you still have this fever tomorrow, I'm going to send you for some tests. And she sent me for an EKG,
Mhm.
and she's like, don't wait, just bring it back to me. I brought it to her, and she's like, oh, you could have pericarditis. And all I'm looking at these waves on a piece of paper. I'm like, I don't understand what this thing is.
Yeah.
Well, it's that's like, accounting, financial statements are almost as technical as an EKG. Yeah, you understand the letters and numbers, but it's the story, it's the patterns,
Mhm.
it's the information that, unless you've got that trained eye. So yeah, I mean, I like to say, does your business have pericarditis and you don't know? I didn't have pericarditis, which
That's
is a
good.
heart condition. I was fine. Um, but it's that difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs to genuinely, and CEOs, to understand their numbers if they didn't come up through the finance track. Come up through a sales track or an ops track. Yeah, financials are a mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. I'm glad that, to hear that everything, checked out fine. But
Yeah.
I also love the fact that you mentioned too about the time that you put in to learn and stuff. Like I think, and you mentioning that if you didn't come up through that and actually study it and know it, that it's really hard to kind of bridge that gap yourself. So
Totally.
I love that you mentioned that, and that you've been able to kind of do that, because I think so many times we think that when we look at a financial statement and we start a business, we should be able to translate it just
Yeah.
because we have a business.
And it's all the relationships that aren't intuitive. Like, oh, when this number moves, I intuitively know this number over here is going to move,
Mhm.
and that's good or bad. And so yeah, it's more complex than I think some people recognize, and it's a function of, we run away from it, we're scared of it, but
Right.
we don't have to be if it's
Yeah.
done right.
Yeah, or we lean on expertise like yours as well too, or people that know it as well. That
Yeah.
helps it become a little bit less scary for sure. And so, you might have already touched on this, but I was going to ask you for what I call your secret sauce, and this could be for
Yeah.
yourself or the business, or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Yeah, so I mean, we do the bookkeeping, and we are the outsourced accounting department, and I think there's a lot of those. To me, it is the so what. We've actually developed our own reporting software, because I hate reporting software that comes out of accounting software. And so we'll actually extract the data through our API, and then we'll actually present the information that makes the so what intuitive and easy to
Mhm.
understand. So it's a mix of data visualization and knowing which numbers to pull. So if you're looking at the right numbers, you get punched in the face with what the story is telling you when it's done right. Um, so that's what I look at as our secret sauce, is the so what, to actually make the decisions. You always hear accountants saying, "Oh, we'll do the accounting so you can make better decisions." You can only make the decisions if you've got that so what, and you've got that story buried in the numbers.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I don't know if this is what you cover as well in your book as well too. I love the name, by the way, and,
Thank
and
you.
being able to kind of pull those things together. But it sounds like in addition to be able to bridge the gap as far as the so what, you seem to be able to have that, which I think is a sign of expertise and mastery, be able to translate that and
Yeah.
communicate that so that people can understand that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the really simple concepts in that, which I'll just offer up, is like, what are the key lever points in the business? We think of financial statements as being complicated, but really, on the income statement, there's only three things you can do to increase your profit. You can increase sales through price or volume. You can decrease your cost of goods, or you can decrease your expenses or hold those steady as your sales grow. That's it. all of the strategy falls into one of those. And yes, certain strategies like product mix will impact sales and cost of goods. Yes. But generally, let's just break it down to the simplest part of those levers, sales, cost. And on the balance sheet, and when you're playing with the balance sheet, you're playing with cash. When you're playing with the income statement, you're playing with profit. So on the balance sheet, it's literally just accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, and your capital equipment. So if you can really focus on those levers, and that's where, again, where we're bringing the shining the light, as I like to say, on those key levers, is that's where this still what really starts to emerge. Oh, we've got to focus. Like, there's no point in growing your sales if your margin is terrible. You'll never get anywhere if you're doing that. So that's where the stories start to come out.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. And yeah, you definitely end up being like on the hamster wheel, so to speak, if you're not
Yeah.
aware of those things. But I think having that knowledge and information, and the fact that you're able to have, the API and the software that you created, but also the book and so many different things that you do, it almost feels, at least to me, and just talking, for a little bit, empowering as well, too, because you start to feel like you have more control over your business when you start to understand those levers, at least on a little bit of a level that in comparison to what you know.
Yeah, I love, and you use the word empowerment. Like, whenever I do my talk, it's a question of, how empowered do you feel over your numbers on a scale of 1 to 10? And a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs I speak to, they start at 3, 4, 5. A good one is at 6. So empowerment, it's so game changing when you feel empowered over the numbers and you know what you're going to do. It's like, okay, I know what to do. Let's move on. You don't end up spinning and stressing. And part of it's about getting the non-problems out of your head too. Let's get rid of the noise that's actually not an issue, but we don't know it's not an issue. So that's clouding our perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. And I'm so big on, spending more time in your zone of genius, the more that you can get that noise and those things that are potentially not answered, I guess, that are lingering, that you don't know the answer to, are sometimes the things that contribute to that noise that keeps you away from doing what we often
I'm definitely going to be using the word zone of genius from now on. I love it.
There you go. There you go. I wish I had coined it, but if you haven't heard it from anywhere else, then I'll definitely take the credit for it. So
I'll tell everybody it was you. That's fine by me.
There we go. Well, awesome. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this might be an app, a book, or a habit, but what makes you more effective and efficient?
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite topics. So I love that you're asking it. And I do a lot, like I read a lot and I grab stuff, but I'll just share the one thing that I feel makes the biggest difference. And it's part of my morning routine. I'm sure you've talked to lots of guests about morning routines. And it's one element of the morning routine, which is, what's the one thing I can do that's going to move the needle the most for my business? And what's the one thing I can do that's going to move the needle for my most personally? It can't be something that's already on a to-do list. It's actually about the creative process of, okay, where am I feeling stuck, and how do I unlock this? And 8, 9 times out of 10, it's kind of a benign nothing, but every once in a while there's just like, oh, how did I not see that? And then I'll action it. I leave a gap in my mornings, unbooked, where I actually go first and I do those number one things. And every once in a while, that's like just a game shifter. And yeah, so that one thing, more than anything else I do, I think moves the needle the most for me.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's absolutely huge. It's so funny because we're always go, 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 that we often don't hold that space to even ask ourselves those questions. We're just automatically looking or thinking about, the to-do list and all the things that we have to knock out. We're not thinking about what is the action that I can take that will help me both personally, but also the organization that I'm a part of, to really move the needle for. Sometimes it comes up, sometimes it doesn't. But if we hold the space, then that allows that opportunity to come.
Yeah. I've actually stopped taking meetings before 9 a.m. I'm making an exception for you because I really wanted to talk with you. But generally speaking, of course I'll make exceptions, but I don't actually book meetings before 9 for exactly what you were talking about. Because we're all so go. You should see my normal calendar. It's back to back. I'm dropping off one Zoom, starting the next. And so having that space I couldn't agree more with what you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in that. I'm very big on time blocking, and the systems allow you that opportunity. I always say the systems will set you free. And I love that you use that word creativity, because we think creativity is sometimes at tension to systems, but really by leaning into the systems, it allows us to be more creative because we don't have to worry about those other things.
Yeah. 100%.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. You might have already touched on this before, but this could be a piece of wisdom or a piece of advice that you might give yourself, or if you were to hop into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Yeah, I mean, I can either give a finance one or I can give a general one. Where would you like to go with that?
I Let's go to the finance one.
The finance one I did allude to. So for
Okay.
me, it's two major things um, that I think completely open people's world from an empowerment standpoint. Number one is data visualization. Quick story, through our API, when we're talking to prospects, we often go to our API and I'll do a presentation like this is what your data is going to look like. And I've had a couple people when I send it to them saying, no, that's not right. And I'll ask them, I'll go, okay, well, can you pull the data for me? Like, no, it is right. They had in their mind something, but because it wasn't in a data visualized format where they could intuitively and immediately understand it, they didn't, they until they saw it, they're like,
Mhm.
oh, that is right. Oh my God. So data visualization, very simple line charts, pie charts. It doesn't have to be complicated. And then the other thing is focusing on those key levers, starting with what is the number one lever that's most out of whack here? And let's go solve that. Let's not worry about the $2,000 problem if we have a $20,000 problem. So yeah, those are the two: data visualization, data visualization. I speak a lot every time I do a presentation. People are like, oh yeah, this is the number one thing I have to do. And then two, it's shining a light on those levers. You get those two things right. Um, yeah, your game, your finance game will change immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take over the world from there. And I love that you mentioned that because I think especially as we kind of talked about a little bit, like how most people will look at finances. Often when you see all those numbers, you imagine people just kind of shut down or they glaze over or they don't want to kind of deal with it. But
Yeah.
to make that, visualization, though, taking that data and making it visualize allows that opportunity to really see the picture and see the story probably a little bit better. And I imagine people are more likely to want to, as you said,
Yeah.
shine the light on those things that will move the needle for.
Well, it goes from being what I call a source of pain to a source of power.
Mm.
Where it's like you're kind of running away from it, but now it's like, okay, give me the stuff because I know what to do with it now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a little bit more time. So if you want to give us the other nugget, that we would be more than grateful.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, for me in general, it has to do with passion and
Mhm.
like, this is a bit of a cliche, but following the passion. And for me, I don't love accounting, but I love analytics. I love strategy. I
Mm.
love that. So I actually ended up building a business around, okay, let's make the accounting not suck. And then let's actually do the important part of the accounting and finance department. And it took me a long time to sort of go through the pain. And so, even in the places where you're unhappy or not enjoying what you're doing, or I did, I should say me, when I wasn't enjoying it, it's like, okay, what am I learning from this? And how can then I apply it in a different way where I'm not going to hate it? I have a team that does the bookkeeping, the accounting, the controllers, all of that's handled. And we've got great people. And then I get to do the part I love. So, life by design, how do I create how I want to live, do what I do? I love working with entrepreneurs. It's so energetic. I mean, you do what you do for the same reason, right?
Mhm.
The energy, the enthusiasm, the like, entrepreneurs can change the world, right? I'm here to help them through their financial blind spot. So passion, passion, passion. Where's the source of passion? And if I'm not in a place of passion, how do I spin what I'm doing? What's the number one thing I can do in the morning to go from a place of not being in a passion to a place of passion?
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. I love that you explained that and broke that down because I think so many times, like you said, if you don't love numbers or don't love accounting or whatever it might be, you might say, I want no, parts of running an accounting business. But in reality, if you drill down and understand what your true passion is, the source of your passion, as you said so well,
Yeah.
you start to realize that maybe it is bridging the gap. Maybe you don't love it because you have a gift or an opportunity that can change that industry. So I love that share that, and of course that you're doing that in your business as well.
And sometimes you have to go through the curse of excellence to get there.
Yeah.
The curse of excellence is you're really good at, but you hate it.
Mhm.
And I had to go through a lot of that to get to finding what I actually love to do. So
Yeah,
um, it's a journey.
absolutely. And I'm a big believer in it, and action will lead you there. So as far as you are taking that action and then kind of looking at that action and seeing, does it work or does it not work, and continue to kind of take action towards that, that's where those things come from.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Spencer, truly appreciate that. And I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is
Hit
the
me.
definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Spencer, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Yeah, I love it. I love that question too. I believe as a CEO, I have an opportunity to change the world. And whether that's my small corner of my world by helping a few other entrepreneurs have a great place to work or whatever it is, but this is actually my opportunity to contribute to the world. And I think that's both a responsibility and an obligation of a CEO to actually do things positively. And so for me, my why, my Simon Sinek why is I believe entrepreneurs can change the world, and my role is to help them through their financial blind spot. It's a gift that I have. It's a gift that I can give the world. And if one of the entrepreneurs I support does something positive for the world, then that's my way of sort of multiplying myself out. So,
Yeah, I love that. I love the word responsibility, and definitely we don't hear the word enough obligation. And I think
mhm.
that when we are giving, certain gifts, we do and are able to help empower people and give them that opportunity to really be in their zone of genius. That
Yeah.
allows us to really make a huge impact in our own specific way. And I think if we all can kind of lean into that and do that, just as you said so well and are doing so well, then that's something where the world can definitely watch out.
Yeah. Love it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Spencer, truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they can get a hold of you, get a copy of the book, find out about all the
Sure.
awesome things you're working on.
Yeah. Thanks. And I mean, I'd actually like to offer your listeners a gift. Um, if anybody's interested in actually you know, reading their financials to them, sucking the data into our API, it does have to be QuickBooks Online. But if you are interested, send me a message, Spencer at shiftfinancial.co. Depending on how many get, I'll do one or two. I won't do everybody. It's a bunch of work on my end. But I'm happy to do that as a gift to you, Gresh, and to your listeners as a thank you for having me. Spencer at shiftfinancial.co, not .com, .co. Somebody bought the .com and is holding it ransom, and I refuse to pay for it. Um, and yeah, the book Entreprenumbers, you can look it up to Amazon. It's kind of anywhere where you'd buy your book. Unfortunately, there's not an audio version. That's only because there's so much data visualization in there. It was hard to kind of bridge that gap. Um, and then, shiftfinancial.co, you'll find more data. There's a bunch of free downloads and resources. There's a sample of a case study I did live with somebody where they moved from a 3 to a 10 in empowerment in 15 minutes. So there's a bunch of free resources. We just launched our break even calculator, another free resource where it's like, if you want to figure out what do I need to sell to break even? What if I hire new staff? There's a bunch of scenarios you can put through there. So a bunch of free resources, everybody's free to use. And if you think I can help you out and help you get from a source of pain to a source of power, Spencer at shiftfinancial.co. Always happy to chat.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Spencer. We will have the links and information in the show notes. And I love that, source of pain to a source of power. And I think anybody who's running a business that wants to do it, especially to get control and opportunity and to be more in control of everything that they're doing, I love that you're helping that happen from a financial standpoint, because it's a huge bedrock to how you're able to be successful. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the free offer and all the awesome things you're doing. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Nice, Crash. Really enjoyed chatting with you.